Welcome to our Midweek Devotion in another week of our lockdown. Thank you for joining us. There's a prominent theologian by the name of Miroslav Volf who asked another prominent theologian, Jürgen Moltmann, a question. Moltmann is the older of the two. And Moltmann's a guy I studied at university, opened my eyes to lots of things, loved it. It was very helpful. Anyway, so the younger theologian asks the older theologian, and this has happened recently, he said, "What do you believe and stand for in the world?" So remember now, these are two theologians speaking to each other. So those are very weighty words. They're big. It's a big question. What do you believe and stand for in the world? Now, I could have guessed all kinds of things that Moltmann might have said in response to Professor Wolf's question, but this is how he responded. Moltmann said, "My life's story is a lived interpretation of Job 36:16. My life story is a lived interpretation of Job 36:16, and this is what 36:16 says. God allured you out of distress into a broad place where there was no cramping." There's some other translations that use slightly different words. There's one that says, God wooed you out of distress into a broad place where there was no constraint. And I thought that was such an interesting reflection for such a great theologian to answer that question. His life is a story of being led out of distress into a broad place where there was no constraint. So we've chosen to film today's devotion behind the gates of our driveway, the symbol of our lockdown, the place of our constraint, and to think that the gospel is a story of how God leads us out of our distress into a place where there is no cramping, where there is no constraint. Moltmann, by the way, went on to say that his life had been characterized by extraordinary, amazing grace. So I was reading Exodus 40 this morning. Exodus 40 is the story of how the tabernacle, this big worship tent, was built by the Israelites. God had instructed them to create a worship place, and it was called the tabernacle, and it was this movable tent because they were a nomadic people. And in Exodus 40, it's put up for the first time, and when it's put up, the glory of the Lord settles on the tent, and the glory of the Lord comes in the form of a cloud. And I want you just to hear this verse from Exodus 40. It says, "In all the travels of the Israelite, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted." And obviously, because we're in this kind of lockdown time, those words had a new sense for me again. It's a great gift, I suppose, of this time. We see things differently. And I was thinking about the glory of the Lord being the thing which kept the Israelites in one place. It was the glory. It wasn't the government rule for lockdown. It wasn't a virus that kept them in the place. It was the glory. And that made me think about saying, so that we are now in lockdown, it struck me perhaps we could think of our lockdown as being a moment for glory, a moment for the cloud to be upon us, a moment for us to think of ourselves in that terms of saying, the glory of the Lord is upon our homes. The glory of the Lord is settled upon our families. The glory of the Lord is settled upon our lives. And I love that idea. For our home, we have felt a distinct sense in this time, really more than anything else, of blessing and of goodness. We have experienced this lockdown as an opportunity to do things we otherwise would not have done. We have found a shift in some of our priorities and things that matter. It's been a very rich time in lots of ways. At the same time, life has gone on as it normally would. We've had a family bereavement, and our hearts have grieved over that and continue to. We have felt the real sadness and even the word pain at being separated from our families, not being able to hold them and hug them and sit around a table with them. And I know many of you would have had that same experience. We have felt the frustrations of shopping and limited movement, all of those things that have been common to us, we've been aware of. But on the whole, this lockdown has largely had a sense of glory, a sense of blessing, and a sense of goodness. Yet I would say in the last week or so, maybe a little more than that, but it really does feel like in the last week particularly, that I've been deeply conscious of this wave of information from different sources of how painful this lockdown is proving to be for people. The moment has arrived. I think of it a bit like a clap, when you get a clap in the face. At first it doesn't really hurt, but then there's kind of this lingering sting afterwards, and it feels like lockdown was a bit of a clap. And then there's this kind of, the lingering sting is beginning to happen now. There's stories of people who are actually losing their jobs. They've been told now. There's stories of people who've heard that they're going to have only a fraction of their income in the next month or two. We've heard stories of people who are unsure about what will happen to their business, whether it will even survive. We've heard stories of people being bereaved and how hard it's been to manage a bereavement in the midst of this lockdown. We've had stories of people whose family have ended up in hospital and how hard it is to not be able to be in the ward with them or watch over them as they're being treated. Just these ongoing senses. The stories have now become common. It was on the front page of the Sunday paper about not just people going hungry, it's moved now to literal starvation for some people. The clap has come, and now the pain is becoming more than just a conversation. And so I would never want to impose on anyone the expectation that this would be a sense of blessing and glory. I think for most people, all of us in one way or another, this is going to have a negative impact on our lives, on our economies, and all other related things. Life is going to be difficult and different in so many ways. But I believe in a God who saves. I believe in a God who redeems. I believe in a God who is powerful. I believe in a God who is making all things new. I believe in a God who is able to take that which is evil, that which is wrong, that which is bad, and turn it for good. I believe in the God of the resurrection who takes moments of death and turns them into life. I believe in the God who said he will never leave us nor forsake us. And so in the midst of this, I wanted to ask you, and I don't impose it on you, I just want to ask you whether you could consider, if you're a person, I speak particularly today to the people who feel they're in trouble, I want to ask you, can you believe with me today? Can you own it? Can you look for it? Can you sense it? The possibility that this glory is upon your home, that this glory is upon your family, that the glory does settle upon your life. And try to discern it. Try to keep your eyes open for it. Try to welcome it. Try to invite the glory of God upon your life, because his mercies are new every morning. He is unfailing in his goodness, and his glory is here. I love, again, if I can remind us, I love Professor Moltmann's words. God has wooed us out of distress into a broad place where there is no constraint. Will you join me in a brief prayer? Lord, we do bring before you, especially today, those who are in trouble. The list is too long to mention here in this moment, but Lord, we lift them before you, and especially those who are listening to this recording. Lord, even in this moment, may they have some sense of your glory settling upon their lives, of the goodness and the wonder and the beauty of God upon their lives. And Lord, please help them in their distress and give them eyes to see that you will lead them into a place of no constraint. We trust you for this, and we offer these requests, these prayers, and these longings to you in Jesus' wonderful name. Amen.